Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in. Here's what we're going to cover today. A week and a half into the U.S. and Israeli strikes against Iran, the latest national public opinion polls are rolling out. We have the results and what the next steps may be. Meanwhile, Senator John Kennedy received widespread praise this week after he apologized while acknowledging that the U.S. bombed a girls' elementary school in Iran, killing 168 people, mostly children. We have the latest from the war on Iran in this story as well. Another county in South Carolina is considering what restrictions, if any, should apply to short-term rentals, like Airbnb. Some see this as an attempt to protect neighborhoods, while others view it as an assault on private property rights. I'll let you decide. Then Congressman William Timmons from South Carolina's 4th Congressional District is in Florida this week with the House GOP caucus meeting with President Trump to outline the plan to maintain a Republican majority in the U.S. House. We'll get a first-hand report of what the President had to say to the congressman present.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
With Americans expressing their frustration with higher fuel prices and fears of this causing more inflation, a new poll breaks down just where the country stands on the war with Iran. We'll have those details for you a little later in today's show. Meanwhile, about 140 U.S. troops have been wounded in the conflict with Iran over the last 10 days, according to a Pentagon spokesperson. Sean Parnell said the vast majority of these injuries have been minor, and 108 service members have already returned to duty. 8 service members, of course, remain listed as severely injured and are receiving the highest level of medical care, and we have had some fatalities as well. These numbers came after retaliatory Iranian rocket and drone strikes had also killed 7 soldiers in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Now, there's some confusion on Capitol Hill. The U.S. Navy did not escort an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz, the White House said. This was amid conflicting reports following a now-deleted social media post by Energy Secretary Chris Wright. White House Press Secretary Leavitt kind of cleared things up when she was talking to reporters in a news briefing yesterday, saying, "I can confirm that the U.S. Navy has not escorted a tanker or a vessel at this time, though, of course, that's an option." Ms. Leavitt said she didn't have a chance to talk to Mr. Wright about his post that triggered a reaction in the energy markets, given the importance of the global energy choke point. She said the post was taken down pretty quickly. The State Department has assisted more than 27,000 Americans with evacuation support and information since the start of the military strikes against Iran, according to the agency. Around 40,000 have returned to the United States on their own via commercial air travel, according to the report. The evacuations began on February 28th amid Operation Epic Fury, as U.S. and Israeli airstrikes have targeted Iran infrastructure and leadership. It'd have to be very scary to have been in the area and want to get home when all of this started. Look, I unfortunately had the experience of being in a foreign country and not being able to get home when I wanted to. This some years ago, some of you may have heard me tell the story. I was in Israel, and someone borrowed my passport It was, I had left it in my backpack in a secret compartment that my wife and Mike Gallagher give me a hard time about even to today. But I'd left it in the backpack and went to dinner, came back, got up the next morning, headed to the airport, and realized that my passport was not in my backpack. And thank goodness for the office of Senator Tim Scott, who, this was on a Friday, by the way, so I spent the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Senator Scott's office got me the first appointment on Monday morning at the embassy, and I was able to get a duplicate and head home on Tuesday. So it's not a good feeling in a friendly situation. I can't imagine being in a country wanting to get home and you've got missiles being fired. Speaking of missiles, you remember the story of the deadly explosion at a girls' school in Iran? And the question everyone is asking is very simple. Who's responsible? Now, we know that in war, you have casualties of innocent people, unfortunately, of civilians. But this one hit kind of hard. Iranian officials claim that 175 students and teachers were killed when the school in the southern city of Manab was destroyed during the opening hours of the U.S.-Israeli campaign against Iranian military targets. Now, video circulating online appears to show what some analysts believe could be a Tomahawk missile striking near the site. The school reportedly sits close to a building used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which could explain why the area was under military scrutiny to begin with. But here's where things get complicated. President Trump says it's far too early to conclude that the United States was responsible. Speaking to reporters, he pointed out that Tomahawk missiles aren't unique to the U.S. anymore. His words, quote, Tomahawks are used by other countries. Numerous nations have them. And that's a true statement. He's right. The president also raised the possibility that the blast could have been caused by an Iranian misfire, arguing that Iran's munitions are often inaccurate. The administration says the incident is still under investigation. However, on Capitol Hill, meanwhile, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy struck a more conciliatory tone. Senator Kennedy told reporters if the United States did in fact cause the strike, it would have been a terrible mistake, and he apologized on behalf of Americans. Kennedy said plainly, we would never do that intentionally. He's also right. And that distinction matters. Accidents in war, while tragic, are very different from deliberate attacks on civilians. But make no mistake, this incident is already drawing international scrutiny. Civilian casualties on this scale raise serious questions about targeting decisions, about the intelligence sources, and the proximity of military installations to civilian infrastructure. Now, some people have said, yes, it's sad. If these young children were caught up in the middle of this war. Others have also pointed out, though, that Iran has been protesting so, yet they have killed thousands and thousands, some estimate 40 to 50,000 innocent civilians because they were protesting the regime. But it's okay for them to do that, I guess. For now, back to the school, the key facts remain kind of uncertain. We don't know. The strike happened on the first day of the conflict. Again, the school was located reportedly right next door to the Iranian military facilities. And investigators are still trying to determine exactly whose weapon hit the site. I think satellite photos show that the school was definitely destroyed. We just don't know by whom. And until that investigation concludes, the story is kind of fluid. We don't know. We're guessing. We're all speculating when we don't have the full details. But one thing is clear. It appears 175 young lives were lost in a tragedy, regardless of who fired the missile. And again, there's lots of ways you can dissect this. If Iran had been doing and acting the way it should, if the Ayatollah and if the supreme leaders of this country had not put their country into this situation, there would have been no reason that the U.S. and Israel would be firing missiles to begin with. so it could have been avoided. Very simple. So to blame the U.S. or Israel is not being totally upfront with this, because the leadership of Iran caused the issue to begin with. They're the ones who caused the missiles to be fired at their country to begin with. We'll keep watching this investigation, and with technology as it is today, I can assure you that eventually we'll know for sure who fired that missile and who's responsible for it, other than, again, the leadership of Iran, who put their country and their citizens, their innocent citizens, in this situation to be living in a war zone where, unfortunately, civilians sometimes are the casualties. Well, the headlines this week say a lot about where the country is right now. President Donald Trump ordered one of the most aggressive military operations against Iran in decades. And now the simple question is this: do Americans support it? What about you? Well, the new polling data is starting to roll in, and the numbers paint a very interesting picture of where the country stands. And depending on which voters you talk to, the answer might kind of surprise you. So here's where we are. Let's start with the big headline. A new national survey shows that Americans are almost perfectly divided on the U.S. military strikes targeting Iran. About half of the voters approve of the military action. The other half disapprove. But here's where things are kind of interesting. Even though voters are split on the military strikes themselves, a strong majority still sees Iran as a real national security threat. That's important. In fact, 61% of voters say Iran poses a serious danger to the United States. So Americans clearly view Iran as a threat. The real debate is how the United States should deal with that threat. So let's look into this. When you dig a little deeper into the polling numbers, you start to see a very clear political divide. Among Republicans, support for the strikes is overwhelming. More than 8 out of 10 Republicans say that they support the use of force against Iran. Now, over on the Democrat side of the aisle, the picture is very different. Does that surprise you? Most Democrats oppose the strikes and say they believe the action actually makes the United States less safe. Now, how do you reconcile that? I'm not quite sure. Independents tend to fall somewhere in the middle, but many share the concern that this conflict could escalate. Other surveys show similar trends. Some polls suggest more Americans oppose the broader war with Iran than support it, particularly when voters start thinking about the long-term consequences. So, those concerns largely center around two issues. First, the risk of escalation. Many Americans worry the conflict could drag the United States deeper into another long, drawn-out Middle East war. In fact, one poll found about 3/4 of voters oppose sending U.S. ground troops to Iran. The second concern is something Americans feel every time they fill up their cars with the gas prices. Many voters believe the conflict could drive fuel prices even higher. And some polls show about 2/3 of Americans expect gas prices to rise because of the war. And we've seen some of that already. So even among people who support confronting Iran, they're still concerned about the economic consequences, and those are real concerns. All of this creates a complicated political situation for the White House. On the one hand, many voters agree that Iran is a threat and support a strong, and we should support a strong response. On the other hand, a significant portion of the country remains skeptical about getting pulled into another extended conflict overseas. Some polls also show voters saying that they still want a clearer explanation of the long-term strategy behind the strikes. And that's not unusual for Americans. Now, whenever the United States takes military action abroad, Americans tend to ask the same basic question: what is the objective? How long will this last? And what will success look like? Now, what the polling really shows is something we've seen before in American politics. The country can agree on the problem, but we're often divided on the actual solution. Most Americans believe Iran represents a real danger, but when it comes to military action, the country remains very cautious. And that caution comes from decades of experience with conflicts in the Middle East. Wars that were long, expensive, and deeply controversial. So right now, the American public is watching very closely, watching the military campaign, watching the economic impact, and watching to see what happens next. Because one of the other things that you can notice in the polls too is that Americans are watching very closely. They're interested in what the outcome could potentially be with this war and what consequences Americans could suffer if this turns into a long, drawn-out process. So we're going to continue watching it, and we'll see what heads up next. And last night saw a lot of activity, and into early morning today, with sirens reportedly blaring in Tel Aviv early as the city came under attack amid another wave of Iranian strikes. Fox News correspondent Nate Foy said despite Israel's strong air defense, half of the missiles are hard to defend against because half of the missiles are cluster munitions. The Israel Defense Forces said it detected a wave of missiles launched from Iran, which still possess the ability to strike despite its depleted capabilities, he said. Explosions could be heard in the distance as he was offering his report. Mr. Foy noted that some Israelis have chosen to continue with daily life despite the attacks, while most seek cover in shelters and other structures per the IDF's instructions. That'd be a hard way to live, wouldn't it? And what you have to understand, and I've been blessed to have traveled to Israel 5 times now, but you have to understand that bomb shelters are a way of life there. Just about every home built has a bomb shelter. All apartment buildings, it's mandatory that they have bomb shelters. Most commercial structures have bomb shelters. So there's a bomb shelter close to you in just about every situation. There are bomb shelters on the streets for people, who maybe are traveling on public transportation that they can get to very quickly. U.S. Central Command reported that hundreds of American air assets are continuing to strike Iranian targets as Operation Epic Fury continues into its second week. CENTCOM wrote on X, hundreds of air assets continue to deliver devastating combat power against the Iranian regime during Operation Epic Fury. The post included images of multiple U.S. aircraft involved in the campaign, including stealth fighters and carrier-based jets launching and recovering at sea. U.S. officials have said the operation has already struck more than 5,000 targets across Iran and significantly degraded Tehran's missile, drone, and naval capabilities. The strikes come as the United States and Israel, of course, continued their sustained air operations. The president says that this is going to continue. Marco Rubio and others have said that we ain't seen nothing yet. My words, not theirs. Basically saying that that Iran hasn't seen the worst, or you might say the best of what our military has to offer yet. But boy, it already looks pretty devastating. By the way, the UN Security Council will convene today in New York to vote on a resolution proposed by Bahrain on behalf of the Gulf Cooperation Council, known as the GCC, condemning the attacks carried out by Iran against the countries of the region. The draft resolution strongly condemns the attacks, condemning the use of missiles and drones against Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan. States that the attacks violate the international law and are a serious threat to international peace and security. It also demands that Iran immediately cease all attacks and threats against regional states, including through its proxies such as Hezbollah in Lebanon. The measure also condemns attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure while emphasizing the right to self-defense under the UN Charter. It calls for maintaining freedom of navigation in international shipping lanes, primarily, of course, the Strait of Hormuz, which has the whole world's attention on it. We've got to be able to maintain the safety of those ships to further disrupt the world economy, and primarily to keep the flow of oil up and down that passage. The Israeli ambassador to the UN said Iran is firing on the countries of the region out of desperation. The Security Council must condemn this aggression. Now, I get that. I understand the importance of the UN, but I've always found it kind of interesting and this is a very serious thing. It's almost laughable, though, that they're going to posture tomorrow. They're going to strut around at the UN, and they're going to pass this resolution. The Security Council probably will. And nobody in Iran, the new supreme leader, and the whatever they call their leadership council, nobody cares. Those people, they don't care about life. They don't respect life like you and I do. This is much more. This is much different for them than it is for anybody else in the world. So, a resolution condemning their actions from the UN Council, it's going to be laughable to them. They don't care. They care one iota what the UN Council has to say. You agree? Text me, email me, joeyhudson.com. You can leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Always use promo code Joey when you go to mypillow.com or call 800-893-4059. Take advantage of all the great deals Mike Lindell has for you. They want to make 2026 the best year ever. And so to thank you for your continued support, they're giving you free shipping on your entire order and wholesale pricing at the same time. Let me give you an example. The classic MyPillows, regularly $49.98, now only $17.98. Turn any mattress into the best mattress ever with the made-in-the-USA MyPillow My Mattress Topper and save up to $100 when you use promo code Joey. Get a set of MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets for as low as $29.98, or the 6-pack towel set. You know, I love the towels, for only $39.98. You're going to get the best specials ever when you go to mypillow.com and use promo code Joey, or call 800-893-4059. Order now. Your entire order ships absolutely free with promo code Joey. By the way, Senator John Fetterman voiced his support yesterday for members of Iran's women's soccer team after Australia granted asylum to several players following fears of retaliation from Tehran. The senator posted on X, in Iran, life is oppression and brutality. These courageous women were facing severe consequences, even their families threatened. Look, I got to agree with him. I got to support that for sure. You know, I love living in upstate South Carolina. It's just a beautiful place to live, especially Greenville, although we have some wonderful areas all around the upstate. The mountains that are in the northern part of Greenville, northern part of Pickens, Oconee. Spartanburg has some beautiful areas too, all around. And of course, you know I love my Lake Kiowee and being over there and all the beautiful waterfalls and hiking trails of Oconee. One of the things, though, that makes Greenville County specifically special is the variety of places that people call home in Greenville. You've got the growing downtown area, which is just wonderful. You've got the suburban neighborhood spreading across the county, and you've got places like Paris Mountain. And if you've ever driven up to Paris Mountain, or maybe hike at the state park or just enjoy the view, you understand why people who live there care so deeply about protecting it. Paris Mountain isn't just another neighborhood. It is a beautiful, beautiful place. In fact, my first apartment that I lived in after finishing school and moving back home, rather than living with my parents, I had a business in Travelers Rest, and I was ready to live on my own, and I was able to rent a guest cottage right in the middle of Paris Mountain. Had a beautiful view of downtown Greenville, across Furman University, the Furman Lake, and all. I loved living on Paris Mountain. Now, for many residents, it is a quiet retreat. That's literally just minutes away from downtown Greenville and other parts of the upstate, a place where roads wind through the trees, wildlife's part of the daily life, neighbors tend to know each other. But lately, some of the people who live there say that peace and quiet has been changing. And the reason is something that communities across America are wrestling with right now: short-term rentals. You know the names: Airbnb, Vrbo, and other platforms that allow people to rent out their homes for a few nights at a time. Now, to be clear, these platforms have exploded in popularity over the last decade. For travelers, they can be a great option. Families like the extra space. Groups can stay together in one house. And for homeowners, it's a great way to earn some extra income. In fact, in a place like Greenville, where tourism continues to grow every year, short-term rentals have become a pretty significant part of the hospitality economy. But for some residents on Paris Mountain, the growth of these rentals is starting to feel less like tourism and to them more like disruption. Neighbors say large homes in the Altamont Road area with those sweeping mountain views have become magnets for short-term rentals. Sometimes that means big groups arriving for a weekend getaway. Sometimes it's wedding parties. Sometimes it's large gatherings of people who have no connection to the community at all, so they say. And with that has come complaints about loud music at night, cars lining narrow mountain roads, and trash piling up after large events. Now, that's the argument you get sometimes with these people who never want anything to change in their neighborhoods. Quite honestly, I have experienced Airbnb, and I've never seen a problem like this. These same problems that you often hear from people who totally object to the idea that you can take your own home and rent it on Airbnb or Vrbo for short term can happen with the homeowners there. Quite often you have a homeowner who has a party or their kids have a party and the music's too loud. The trash gets piled up out on the street. So it's not just the short-term rentals, but people love to spotlight them, to target them. One woman who recently moved to Audubon Road described a situation to the Post and Courier where a party got so out of hand that people were wandering around the mountain, including, she said, one man running around naked. Again, that could happen whether it's an Airbnb or not. That could happen with just some group with a wild party. Now, I don't know about you, but that's probably, I admit, that's not the type of activity most folks expect when they move to a quiet mountain community. Longtime residents say incidents like that are becoming more common. And I get that. I understand that. And the frustration for many of them is this. They often don't know who to call when problems happen. Well, let me ask you, if it were your neighbor, who would you call? You'd call the neighbor. Somebody owns that home. Call whoever owns the home. It's just that simple. Because the person responsible for the property will take care of it. So this is the issue, though, that's landing squarely in front of Greenville County Council. The council recently created a committee to start exploring whether the county should adopt rules regulating short-term rentals. In other words, telling other people what they can do with their property, which I totally object to. When you lose the right to use your property as you see fit, that's not the role of government. But this is where things are getting a bit complicated. But because on the one hand, you got residents who feel like their neighborhoods are slowly turning into weekend event venues. I doubt that it's really that bad. That's an exaggeration. But to them, that's how they feel. On the other hand, tourism leaders, by the way, say these rentals have become an important piece of Greenville's visitor economy. During a presentation to county leaders, tourism officials said there are now close to 2,000 short-term rental properties operating in Greenville County. That's a pretty big number. In fact, it represents about 1 out of every 5 lodging options in the county. Most of those are single-family homes. Tourism officials also say the revenue from these rentals have grown rapidly over the past 4 years. Short-term rental income in the county has increased by about $25 million per year. Today, it makes up roughly 10% of all travel lodging revenue in Greenville County. So clearly, this isn't a small industry anymore. It has grown. And there's another piece of the puzzle that county leaders are considering. Right now, the county does not collect its local accommodations tax from short-term rentals. Hotels pay that tax, though. Most short-term rentals do not, which means the county could potentially be leaving tourism tax revenue on the table. Now, here's where things get even more interesting, though. If Greenville County did decide to start collecting that tax, it probably wouldn't fall directly on property owners. Companies like Airbnb, Vrbo typically collect those taxes automatically through their booking systems and pass them along to local governments. So if the county adopted the policy, it could mean more tax revenue without dramatically changing how hosts operate. So you see where this is headed? You got a group of people who are complaining about Airbnbs in their neighborhood, but the county may be looking at this very much differently. The county may be looking at the lost revenue. What do we need to do to pick up that lost revenue? Hey, and you know what? If I'm out there renting my home on Airbnb, I'd be okay with that. I'd rather you tell me, okay, you got to pay your fair share of the taxes than to tell me you can't rent your home for short-term rentals. But now some of the supporters of those restrictions say taxes are only part of the conversation. The bigger debate is about regulation. Should the county limit how these rentals operate? Should there be permits, limits on occupancy, rules about parking, noise restrictions? Well, you have a lot of that stuff anyway. You've got restrictions on noise. You've got restrictions on parking in some neighborhoods. Now, Greenville is looking at other counties and how they're doing this. Places like York County, Lexington County, Charleston County all have ordinances governing short-term rentals. But the rules vary widely. Some counties take a lighter approach. Some have come down on short-term rentals. The big question here is it okay for government to tell you what you can do with your property? I say, no, it is not. Love to hear from you. Text me, email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Joining me on our guest line, Congressman William Timmons from South Carolina's 4th District. How are you, sir?
Joey, good. Good to be with you. Crazy times down here in Florida. We had an incredible night last night with the president, and I'm more excited about midterms than ever.
Yep. Well, let's talk about that. What were some of the key priorities that the president emphasized to you guys in your meeting?
I think the number one takeaway was that we have to pass the Save America Act, and the president is willing to lean in, and he said that he was going to veto anything that we sent him, and if it wasn't the Save America Act. And he actually added 2 provisions to it, and the theory is that all of these issues, there's 5 issues, all of these issues are 90-10 issues. Democrats are polling in the high 80s for them. So number one, you have to prove that you're a citizen in order to register to vote. Number 2, you have to show an ID to vote. Number 3, you have to no mail-in ballot unless very strict exceptions. And then no men and women's sports and no transgender surgeries for minors.
Yeah.
Those are the 5 things that the president wants on his desk, and he wants it in one bill. And it's simple. We got to save America, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Now, the House, you guys have passed the bill. It's over in the Senate. Is there any hope that that it can come out of the Senate?
So the Save America Act, as passed by the House, did not include the no men and women's sports and no transgender surgeries for minors.
Yeah.
But so our plan is to refile it, include those provisions, and then send it over to the Senate. And it's bizarre. I mean, there's this issue of the filibuster, and I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of the filibuster, but I want to hear these Democrats talk about why they're against these issues that 85% of the Democrats, 98% of Republicans want these things. 85% of the Democrats want these things. So I think that we need to enforce the rules of the filibuster, make them sit up there and talk for hours and hours about why they think this is bad policy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Congressman William Timmons is our guest today. Iran was, of course, a major topic of the conference yesterday as well. What message did President Trump deliver to you guys about the ongoing conflict and where we're headed with that?
You know, for 50 years, Iran has chanted death to America and have just funded terrorist regimes. And, I mean, they're the largest state-sponsored terrorism in the world. So the president finally said enough's enough. They were prepared to attack, and the president issued the order to preemptively attacked because their attack was imminent. And we can't continue to allow countries to operate this way. So the president has said they have to unconditionally surrender and change their ways. And, we had a lot of fun stories, but I think the message was clear. Peace through strength works, but you have to be strong and you have to be willing to fight in order to avoid fighting.
Yeah. One of the biggest issues that Americans are talking about right now, of course, is the quick jump in gasoline prices. I know the president talked about that too, about attacking Iran's hold on the shipping in that region. How does the administration see that strategy translating into lower energy prices here at home, and how long could that take?
The president's exploring all options. I think the biggest issue for energy prices is getting new nuclear online and continuing to drive the cost of oil and gas down through a variety of measures. I think that permitting and regulation are two huge components, but affordability generally is the number one issue right now facing Congress and the White House, and we're doing everything we can to tackle it. But energy prices are a huge component of that because they go into everything. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Every good, every service requires energy, and so tackling energy affordability is very top of mind.
Yeah. Now, another topic that the president addressed, too, was the summit at Doral, where he discussed with Caribbean and Latin American leaders building this alliance with countries there in that region. How significant could that kind of partnership be for U.S. national security and our continued security at the border?
It's huge. The fact that we have these multi-billion-dollar narco-terrorist organizations, there's about a half dozen of them, operating in Latin America is just unacceptable. And I mean, you saw what occurred in Mexico recently. The Mexican government killed one of the cartel leaders, and there was mayhem. And I mean, it was incredible violence that occurred as a result of that. But these are multi-billion-dollar organized criminal organizations. I mean, we cannot allow that to occur. And we definitely can't allow it to occur miles away from U.S. sovereign territory. So the president is appropriately taking action. He's working with our allies and all the other governments. And I mean, listen, we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. And we are not going to stand by while thousands, tens of thousands of Americans die from drug overdose. It's just destroying so many lives in our country. And so I think it's incredible that it took this long for us to stand up to these organized criminal groups. I mean,
Yep.
It's long overdue.
Yep. Congressman Timmons, the president also talked about Cuba and suggested that the current regime may be in its last moments, hinting at negotiations happening possibly through Secretary of State Marco Rubio. What role should the U.S. play in encouraging a transition to freedom in Cuba as well?
Peace through strength works, and when you have dictatorships that are enslaving their society and not enforcing the rule of law and allying with Russia and China against our national security miles away from the United States, I mean, it's clearly important to us. Secretary Rubio is doing an incredible job, and I think he is well positioned to solve yet another one of our problems.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that the whole idea of you guys being together in Florida is to talk about the midterms and unifying the Republican caucus heading into the midterms. Do you think that was accomplished? You really feel good about what we're facing in November?
Well, we just got down here last night, and the president gave us a welcome speech. So today's the hard work that has to occur. We got to get all of our ducks in a row, get everybody on the same page. And I mean, the biggest thing is reconciliation, because we don't need the Democrats to do that. And we need to find the pay-fors to save the taxpayers trillions of dollars and change policy to align with our interests to maximize the chance of people showing up in November and saying they're better off than they were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. And affordability is top of mind. Healthcare is another major issue we got to deal with. But we got the policies that work, and the Democrats just have, I mean, they don't have much these days. They don't have leaders. They don't have policies. They don't have a plan. So we got to show the American people that we have a plan and that it is going to make their lives better.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here to do. And I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Congressman William Timmons, is always a pleasure. Be safe, and we'll talk with you again soon.
Be well, my friend. Thank you.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.